This is the story of why I decided to turn my game jam entry into a full Steam release and what I've learnt so far. So, I've always loved games. So when I was younger and I learnt that I could just download Game Maker Studio for free and start making them, I spent countless hours after school and on weekends learning how to code and do pixel art. My greatest success was a 2D platformer version of the Gmod Guess Who mode where you all played on the same keyboard. I would take it into school on a USB stick and play it in the library with my friends. I enjoy game dev, and I always dreamed of one day releasing a proper game, but as life happened and I got older, I stopped putting in the hours and eventually stopped making games altogether. Last year, I decided to pick it up again. I found video tutorials boring at first, and I personally didn't feel like they helped me very much, so instead I did some game jams. I really enjoyed them, and after each one it felt like I had learned a lot. One of the jams I entered was the GMTK 2025 game jam. For this jam, I decided to turn Minesweeper into Balatro and I made Swope, a game where you clear Minesweeper boards trying to get enough risk and reward points to beat the required score and proceed to the next loop. After each round you got to visit a store where you could buy brooms, which work like jokers, buy tiles for special effects to add to your boards, or buy upgrades like more HP. The game received a lot of positive feedback and I was proud of how it turned out. After doing a few successful game jams like this one, I felt that I had learned way more than I had known before and I was ready to start making my first full game, one that I could release on Steam and deem a real game. I spent about a month brainstorming what game I wanted to make. The most important factor to me in deciding was considering the time frame the game could be finished in. Like with game jams, I learned that doing small project after small project is a great way to learn, so I didn't want to pick a project that I would be locked into for several years before it would be in a releasable state. Also, I would like to be able to do game dev full time. Now I don't know how attainable that dream is, but spending several years on a single game is a massive gamble that I just don't need to take either way. I decided to myself that something that could be finished in a year or two sounded reasonable. That being said, I also wanted to pick something with a pretty variable scope. I only made my channel last year, so I'm still very small. There's always a chance that the game gains a lot of traction from these videos. If that were to happen, I would want to spend a lot longer working on it than originally intended to make sure it's as good as it possibly could be. Speaking of an audience, under the announcement trailer I had a comment to ask about a Discord server. I think a server would be a great way to share updates, answer questions and talk about the game. If you're interested in this, leave a comment below. If people want one, I'll make one. Anyway, back to the devlog. So I knew that the game I would make would need to be something I really enjoyed making and playing as well, since I would be committing a lot of time to it. I knew it would need to be something with that variable scope I was looking for, and also I wanted to pick something that had the potential to sell well. Now, I wouldn't really care if I ended up losing money, because I didn't make back the £80 you have to pay to make a Steam page, but if I can pick something that has potential to sell on top of the scope and the passion, then there's no reason not to do that. I had a number of ideas, but I felt the best one was to make a full version of Swope. I enjoyed making it a lot during the jam. I love playing Minesweeper and Balatro. It's a roguelike game, so once the main shell is built, the scope depends on how much stuff I decide to put in it, and the jam version had received a lot of positive feedback, including some people literally saying they wanted a full Steam release. Now, would I recommend turning a game jam entry into a full release to anyone else considering it? Well, by starting with a game jam entry, you already have a prototype for your game. You get to see how people feel about it and how much they enjoy it. You can learn what works and what doesn't, and you also get a bit of a visibility boost, since you might get to start development with people already interested in the game. That being said, making a game is a huge time commitment, so you really need to be sure you're willing to commit the time. If you're coming off of a jam on a high after getting good feedback, you might jump into a long-term commitment without thinking if you'll still want to work on it in a few months' time after the hype has died down. Also, just because an idea does well in the jam doesn't mean it will do well on Steam. Firstly, the expected playtime is vastly different, and also games on Steam need to convince people to buy them by having some sort of hook, which game jam games don't need. I think as long as you consider your other options and ideas and don't rush into a decision, then turning a game jam entry into a full release is a great idea. My simple plan to start development for my game was to make a Steam page, then a devlog about the start development, and then plan the next phase based on how the first went. This is because I knew the next step after a Steam page would be a demo, and I wasn't sure how long it would take me to make a demo. For development, I chose to stick with the tools I'd been using for the past few months. The game engine Love2D, the same one used to make Balatro. It doesn't have a GUI or drag and drop features like Unity or Godot, but despite that I find it quite easy to use, and I'd really enjoyed learning it. I can't quite explain it, but something about having to write the code and put every single thing on screen gives a level of satisfaction and control that really tickles my brain. I use Sprite for my pixel art because it's the best pixel art software available and it's super cheap, and for code editing I use Sublime Text since Love2D doesn't come with an editor, so I need a third party one. I pick Sublime Text because it's super fast to open files and swap between projects. For game development, I wholeheartedly recommend using Sprite and Sublime Text. And for the question of, would I recommend making a game with a more niche engine like Love2D? Well, firstly, I think the importance of using a super popular engine like Unity, Unreal or Godot is overstated. They do have a lot more resources available to learn them, but every engine has tutorials that teach you how to use it. Sure, big engines have more specific tutorials like how to build a top-down shooter or how to build a 3D platformer. Once you know how to use an engine, you can break down all the bits you would need for a 3D platformer yourself and work out how to do each of them. The second main selling point of the big engines is that they have more features, which is a very valid selling point. These engines come with built-in scene editors, tile mapping, texturing, etc. These things are nice, but they're not essential. So many popular games like Balatro, Undertale, Stardew Valley all didn't use one of the big engines. The reasons to choose a more niche engine vary a lot depending on the engine, but I think overall I would say the big engines are popular for good reasons, but that doesn't mean you have to use them. It's always worth experimenting with whichever engines you find interesting and finding the one that works best for you. For my Steam page, I knew I would need the 2 descriptions, some GIFs, some screenshots, some capsule arts, and also wanted a trailer. Now, I didn't know much about making a Steam page, so I took some notes on some of my favourite games as research. I found that descriptions are normally broken up into chunks by subtitles, images, or GIFs, and normally follow a pattern of explaining what the game is, what gameplay it has, what features it has, and almost all Steam pages use bullet points at some point to quickly fire off selling points. I'm happy with the description I came up with. It's by no means perfect, but I spent quite a while tweaking it, and I think it does a good job at describing the game and its selling points. Onto the art. The first hurdle I had to tackle was the game's logo. I came up with 3 different logo designs, mixing together different ideas for the direction the text would go, what colours it would use, how simple it would be, and all sorts. I decided to go with the bubble text style red and yellow logo because I felt the golden design was too complicated and the stone design was too grey. Now, I'm by no means a graphics designer and I'm still learning how to do pixel art, but I gave my best effort for making the capsule art for the Steam page. I only had one idea for the design, which was to have tiles flying out of the background spiral. Luckily for me, this is an incredibly easy effect to achieve in GIMP, and it turned out pretty good. Now, if you go online, the advice you will hear for capsule art from professionals, like the marketing guru Chris Zakowski, is that you should always hire a professional capsule artist to do this art, because of how important and specialised it needs to be. On Steam, people will see a sea of games, and you want your art to be something that stands out in a good way. I chose to ignore this advice because I didn't want to spend money. Now, the capsule art is something that matters a lot more when you release a demo or the game. Currently, no one will find Swope by browsing on Steam because it's just a to be announced release date. All the wishlists are coming from the YouTube trailer. When I get closer to making a demo, I might reconsider whether or not I want to hire an artist. I just wanted to give it a good go myself first. Let me know what you think of how I did in the comments, or call me a melon who needs to hire an artist if you'd rather do that. As well as the Steam page art, I also needed to work on some art for the actual game. I found a goldmine of a site called BitFontMaker 2. It lets you draw pixel art fonts in your browser. It works super well and can support all the fancy characters that different languages use. I couldn't wrap my head around FontForge, so I was using Sprite to make fonts before I found this site, which might have taken several years off of my life. I tried to draw a font that matches the numbers on the minesweeper tiles, but it ended up looking a lot like Balatro's font because it's the exact same dimensions, and there's not many ways to do a simple glyph in a small space. For the UI panes and buttons, I had a few ideas. I was considering going for simple designs with flat blocks of colour to leave the important bits on the screen to stand out, but my sketches of this didn't look very good. I had grand visions of creating a skeuomorphic design which would look like the inside of one of the crafts, or like a remix of the original minesweeper design. The obstacle I faced was that I'm not sure where the best place for each bit of UI is, and also how big they need to be. Whether or not I'll need different sides with different aspect ratios, just a bunch of reasons that essentially boil down to the fact that if I spend a long time drawing and designing nice UI pieces before testing how the UI feels, that I might have to scrap hours of work. I decided that the smartest thing to do would be to use simple panes with a quick shader I wrote that lets you recolor them easily, and also this button design I made to look like slot machine buttons. It's just the same one colored differently. Now that I had all the elements to make a Steam page, it was time to actually do it. To make a Steam page, you first need to apply for a Steamworks account, which involves paying the £80 fee to get an application credit. This is basically just a game on Steam. you have to go through all the forms about tax information and ID, and then wait about a month to get accepted. I'd already done this earlier because I knew I'd want to release a game someday, and the credits don't expire. To make a page, you have to use Steamworks, a dashboard made specially for developers to manage their Steam games. It's surprisingly obtuse and difficult to use. You are immediately harangued with checklists and so many different page things to complete. I don't even remember everything I had to fill in, and to be honest, I don't know what I'm going to have to fill in when it comes to release the demo, but that's a problem for future me. Anyway, after bumbling around in Steamworks, I found the page to upload my art, write my descriptions, and set all the settings needed to make a page public. All that was left was to make a trailer. So, I had an idea of what the trailer would be from the start and what I could show in it, but I also had a lot of lofty ideas of what I could add to source up the trailer. I wanted to add in a parallax background that bends images into a cylinder shape. I wanted to have lots of brooms, crafts, and just art in general to show off. I wanted to show off cool transitions and particles and screens from the game. I was faced with the decision of whether or not I should spend more time working on getting a better trailer, or make a trailer with what I had and stay on a good pace. At the time, I thought all of this stuff would take a lot less time than it actually did. 2 months later, I finally decided that I had enough and had to stop adding things to the trailer and just release it with what I had. Stepping back and thinking more critically about this decision, on one hand, I know that at the time I was expecting to spend way less time on the trailer stage, and misjudging how long something will take is not good practice. But if at the start I had Doctor Strange show me the timeline where I didn't extend the deadline and release the first version of the trailer as is, versus the timeline where I spent an extra month and a bit adding juice to it and released the version of the trailer that you've all seen, then I would have chosen to spend the extra time improving it because I think the results are worth it. And there was more I could have added at the end, like working on the difficulty settings to show off, or doing more art for the shops to show off, but I made the decision to stop when I did because I knew I had done enough and that working on it further wouldn't be a good use of time. I guess the takeaway is that game dev is kind of hard and can take a lot longer than expected. For the future, I think it's definitely worth spending more time estimating how long things will take, and setting off with an idea of what gets cut if it takes too long, or what gets added if you're ahead of schedule. Also, having consistent decision points where you actively choose to keep improving or move forward with what you have is very important. If you don't, then you'll end up just sliding into an outcome without getting to pick it yourself. Anyway, once I had all the stuff coded and footage filmed, it took a couple of days to edit together the trailer. I forgot that I would need sounds for it, so I had to make them all specially for the trailer, like a professional. Just like everything else, this was my first time making a trailer, so I spent some time studying other trailers and trying to emulate what they did. I put together a bunch of quick scenes showing off bits of the gameplay and juicy visual effects, and it felt like a real trailer. I added the same camera slide effect to almost every scene in the trailer, and honestly it made quite an improvement. For a first ever trailer, I'm very proud of the final result. I put it on the Steam page, submitted the page review, and sat back and relaxed. And by relaxed, I mean I was checking my email every 10 minutes waiting to get approved. Thankfully, it only took about 3 days, and as soon as I got the approval email, I launched the page and published the trailer on my channel. So, I published my game on Steam, and after the first 2 days of it being up, I've got 500 views on the trailer and 25 wishlists on the Steam page, which I was very happy with. I was thinking that I was definitely going to get my £80 back, and that's the start of a good foundation to go into Nextfest with, since Nextfest is where most new games get their wishlists, and the data shows that the more you go into Nextfest with, the more you come out of Nextfest with, so I felt good. But then, over the next few days, the trailer kind of blew up, which was a pleasant surprise. Currently, the video is sitting at 25,000 views, and the game has, drumroll please, 1,257 wishlists, which is kind of crazy to think about. Thank you to everyone who wishlisted the game. You know, according to the data, in 2025 there was an average of 50 games released every day, and almost all of these didn't even manage to sell 100 copies, so it feels great to have already broken out of Steam's dark dungeon. The next step is working on and making the best possible demo I can for the Steam Nextfest. I'm currently aiming to have something ready for May. I think this is doable, but if the time comes and I don't feel like it's ready, I will always choose to keep working on it. People may be disappointed at the time, but they'll be happier in the long run. I'm also going to be posting more. If you've enjoyed this video so far, consider subscribing so you don't miss the new uploads. Speaking of development, I've been working on the options menu and save files recently, which is why this video is more of a story time than a showcase. After this is done, I wanted to experiment a bit with UI. I got lots of feedback on the trailer about things that could be improved with the visuals, like cramped spacing, too much motion, odd colours, that kind of thing. Overall, development so far has gone very smoothly, and I've gotten tons of lovely feedback. As I've said quite a few times, this is my first time doing anything of this scale and learning how to do all these bits of game dev. I definitely wouldn't call it easy, but I would call it learnable, if that's a real word. I really do think that if you're genuinely passionate about game development, then you can learn anything. You don't need some insane talent or to be a brain genius. Hell, I'm a melon who spent months on a trailer after all, and I'm managing fine. So I hope sharing my experience, all the lessons and hurdles from working on Swope, is illuminating for someone, or just entertaining I guess. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. The next devlog will probably be on getting gameplay finished, or maybe on UI, or maybe something else entirely. I don't have a plan for videos yet, but thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, please leave a like, subscribe, wishlist Swope. If you're interested in the Discord, leave a comment, and just have a wonderful day.